On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, what to expect from CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams, and how can the Houston Texans win in the trenches to pull away with a victory?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans fans, listeners, and viewers to this Friday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you to all of our everydayers coming back to close out the week with us as Cody and I talk Texans. I'm your football analyst, Texans football analyst, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman down south, up north, holding it down, still all the way up in Detroit, still Texas credential media member, Big Sarge, Cole T. Davis.
Yeah, tell him again, tell him stop that hating.
And still,
no,
you guys want to get Big Sarge back on the show. We do as well. We got to look at getting him back on next week. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Cody, there are some trends the Houston Texans from the Chicago Bears, the Houston Texans can look at that game against the Tennessee Titans, and that will help them beat this team this upcoming Sunday night. Looking at how the Chicago Bears allowed the Tennessee Titans to rush for 115 on the ground. Bad interior offensive line play for the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams being under pressure, and how they could speed up the game for Caleb Williams, which will equal creating turnovers for the Houston Texans. So let's dive right into it. Cody, take us away.
Yeah, look, and we're going to, of course, just talk about Sunday's primetime game, the first official primetime game since 2019. I understand in, 2022, we had that random Thursday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles, but that was the season where they was making everybody play on a Thursday night. And last year, even though we had the playoff game, and of course they flexed that Indianapolis Texans season-ending Week 18 contest, they flexed that into a primetime game. It wasn't originally on the schedule. So for the very first time since 2019, when we had a certain quarterback still taking snaps on the center for this organization. The Houston Texans will be back in prime time. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into it, man, please, if you go into the game on Sunday, make sure you get there early. Make sure you make a lot of noise, and make sure you let people know that the city of Houston does not play. I was at the Lions game on Sunday, and everybody, this is the loudest and best crowd I ever seen in the league. I'm like, nah, H-Town, we got to let them know. But with all that being said, John, look, of course, the biggest storyline when you take a look at the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears games, I think you got to look at the young quarterbacks, man, CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams. And I love what you and Lauren talked about on yesterday, and I 100% agree with you that when you take a look at this game, this cannot be a game where the Houston Texans can allow Caleb Williams to have this quote-unquote breakout game. I don't think it's going to happen, because after covering CJ Stroud every single day last season, he still did not look like quote-unquote CJ Stroud in game 2. Towards the back half of that game, that's when we started seeing some potential, but it wasn't until week 3, especially week 4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, when we saw the CJ Stroud that we all became to love and know. But the only reason why I wanted to point that out, because this is the second game of Caleb Williams' career. And I do believe that he's still going to have a very good career. I think he's going to be a damn good quarterback in this league. However, I think this is definitely going to be an easy game for the Houston Texans, and a quote-unquote statement game per se for the Houston Texans in terms of the defensive side of the ball, because you're going up against a rookie quarterback. And John, listeners and viewers, you guys have heard me say this time and time again. I truly do believe if everybody can stay healthy, and of course, once Coach DeMeco Ryans and Matt Burke have an opportunity to tweak those issues that we've been talking about ever since OTAs, ever since training camp, ever since preseason, even, of course, ever since week 1 victory against the Indianapolis Colts, I still believe that the Houston Texans can have a top 3 defense in this league. And I don't see Caleb Williams going into this game and having a statement game against the Houston Texans. And on the flip side, I know we got to give the Chicago Bears defense a lot of respect. However, I truly believe that this is going to be a moment where a lot of people look at CJ Stroud outside of the city of Houston and say, you know what? That young man is definitely going to be an MVP caliber player for this upcoming season, man. Because the one thing I know about CJ Stroud, when the lights are at its brightest, when there's a lot at stake in the terms of playing against a respectable defensive team, CJ Stroud always going to find a way to ball out, and I do believe that's what we're going to see. We're going to see one quarterback in terms of CJ Stroud hold his own and put on the show. Then we're going to see another quarterback, with all due respect, because this is only the second game of his career, going to go through the struggles, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference between the Houston Texans and the Bears on Sunday.
Yeah, and I do think that we got to highlight this is Caleb Williams' second game in his young career.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think he's going to be a bust? That's not coming out of our mouth.
No.
I think he'll figure it out, right? I do think, though, for Caleb Williams, and this is something that I've heard scouts say behind the scenes, on the scenes, and conversations in passing. I've heard scouts and people who watch Caleb Williams say he has to learn how to play within structure, within the pocket, within reason. And so, like, when I'm watching, I'm thinking, like, okay, there's sometimes he's bailing out too quickly. There's sometimes he's creating pressure because he wants to move outside of the pocket. But then there's sometimes where that offensive line, dating back to going back to their first game against the Tennessee Titans, that offensive line just ain't gonna cut it. It is what it is. And so I think that what we are to expect from the CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams battle, you highlighted CJ, I think, beautifully, right? But for Caleb Williams, will his interior offensive line, starting with his center, what's his name, Coleman Shelton, will they play better? Right? Will they have the necessary adjustments to be more impactful in this game so that front will he have that necessary adjustment so that front five could be better, so that Caleb Williams can have more time in the pocket to make some of those wild plays? But I don't think that they will. I don't think that offensive line will hold up better. I don't think the centers are going to play better. And if you are able to get pressure on Caleb Williams, if the Houston Texans are able to do that, then you're looking at a Caleb Williams that was 1 of 7 for 11 yards when under pressure. So 1 of 7, 11 yards under pressure. And this is a team that will create pressure. The pressure that they created last week, well, they went up against a damn good offensive line, so was able to create pressure. But where did their pressure come from? Who had those 2 sacks? Foley and Mario Edwards. And so that's on the inside. They're going to be able to create that pressure on the inside, flush him out the pocket. And I still think, hey, guys, we didn't say his name a lot last week, Daniil Hunter, but he'll be there. I saw I've been seeing crazy tweets all week, by the way. Arian Foster wasn't important to the Houston Texans.
That's so stupid.
And I thought that was ridiculous. I know we're talking Chicago Bears, but I thought that was ridiculous. But I also saw Will Anderson should have never been drafted with the number 3 overall pick. He was not impactful Sunday, the whole 9. And I'm thinking to myself, a lot of people look at the paper and the stats and not look at what's going on the field. So that's how you stop them. For Houston, you create that pressure. The Bears didn't necessarily run the ball well. They were held under 100 yards, 3.8 yards per carry, and then on the flip side, they allowed the Tennessee Titans to rush for 115 on the ground. And then attacking Caleb Williams, speeding the game up for him. Now he's got to process quickly, right? And that was something that for CJ playing against the Baltimore Ravens last year in his first game, and in that first half of his second game against the Indianapolis Colts, it was just too fast. The NFL is fast. The speed is fast. But for Caleb Williams, you speed it up for him, yeah, he'll give you some turnovers. Here you go. Here's the ball. And I always look at turnovers in 2 ways. Either A, you are directly getting the ball, or B, you're able to get some good field position. And for Houston, Kaimi Fairbairn can knock down a 50-yarder. So all you got to do is put in this area. I think Houston comes away from this game, excuse me, guys, victorious by 2 scores, honestly. And I think if you speed that game up for Caleb and make him process quicker than he's, really probably accustomed to right now at this stage in his career and create that pressure, you're going to see this Texans defense feast on the Chicago Bears. Plain and simple. When we come back, we will talk about how the Houston Texans can win this game. It starts in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So we got more Texans talk on the other side when we come back. But first, you're hiring for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all of the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you find and hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/locked on. That's linkedin.com/locked on to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And you heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on the Locked On Texans podcast across the Locked On Podcast Network. They are still America's #1 sports book. They got something different for you right now. You guys are going to love this now through September 22nd. So you don't got much longer to get in on this deal. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV and their base plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's Double Your Winnings for all of Sunday's 9:15 pregame money bet lines. Profit Boost will be starting live. It started live yesterday. You can view your account page and now learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. So you heard us talk about, the trenches, the inside, and that is where it starts for the Houston Texans, right? And that's where it started last week, getting pressure on Anthony Richardson to create some of those longer downs. But also, I think specifically highlighting the offensive line, starting with the trenches and how well they blocked. I mean, Pat McAfee of ESPN, he was disgusted. There's a clip floating around, and he had to just come out and say, man, the Houston Texans just beat the bleep out of the Colts front four, defensive line, linebackers included. And I still believe that's how this team wins. They put an emphasis on that when Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryans got here. We want to run the ball. We want to be physical up front. And both of those guys came over from the San Francisco 49ers, who, by the way, they got their offensive line back. No CMC this past week, but they had a guy that, Cody, me and you probably could have walked down and did the same thing and rushed for 150 behind.
Exactly. He's probably going to do it again this week.
He may do it again this week, but that they put that emphasis on being better offensively in the run game, and we saw it. I'm not going to say for the first time because I think Motor had some good gains for Houston last year, but Motor isn't Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon's first game out was 159 yards. The Chicago Bears allowed the Tennessee Titans early on to be able to establish their run game. So I think for the Houston Texans, the best way to win this game, to play this game, is to run the ball, right? Allow CJ to be CJ, and with running the ball, controlling the time of possession, controlling the clock. Caleb Williams can't do nothing magical if he don't got the time to do so, if he don't got the opportunities to do so, if he does not have the possessions to do so. So I'm looking at them and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you got to win in the trenches that way. Control the clock again. Be one of the more physical teams, dominating teams in the NFL. And when you play teams like the Chicago Bears, at the end of the year, Chicago needs to go back and say, hey, we got to look at why we were not successful when we played the Houston Texans.
I do want to apologize to the listeners, the viewers out there, and say, you know me, I've always tried to find an X factor at every single position, but I never gave an X factor on the offensive line. And it wasn't until I was watching the game against the Indianapolis Colts, looking at how successful the Texans were in their rushing attack. And I've understand that over the last 2 years, they have actually had some good games. You know, you mentioned Motor last season, but the biggest X factor, and one of the biggest X factor for not just for the O-line, but for this entire team, is Kenyon Green. Because, John, even though we've seen Joe Mixon put on a phenomenal show against the Indianapolis Colts, and I think he's definitely going to have an opportunity to do it again against the Chicago Bears. Once again, a Bears defense that we have to respect, because you have an offensive line for the very first time since I can remember. Everybody is on the same accord because they are playing the position that they was meant to play, and you're playing it with the people who are meant to start. That's very important because, John, over the last 2 seasons, it was always somebody playing out of position. It was always somebody trying to fill a vacancy. And even when you take a look at this offensive line, when it was quote unquote somewhat healthy last year, you still have 4 of your projected 5 starters because Kenyon Green wasn't there. And watching his growth and development going all the way back since OTAs, man, that young man has really made a difference for this offensive line. And I think he's going to do wonders for the Houston Texans, not just against the Bears, but throughout this whole entire 2024 campaign.
You know what? We also got to mention this. The Texans offensive line, early on in the game, they did allow, some sacks, but offensively, I think they got better throughout the game, but they got to understand that the Chicago Bears will blitz them. Matt Eberflus will he will send the house. That allowed the Chicago Bears to hold the Tennessee Titans to 25 yards on 10 attempts in the second half. Mm-hmm. So we talk about them being able to establish the run, and that's great. I think we're just so excited because we finally had an opportunity to see it done. But, the confidence level in the Houston Texans offensive line in terms of communicating and picking up stunts and extra men coming out, late delay blitzes, that's not there for me yet. Right now it's not. So I think that is an area when you talk about winning in the trenches, because the fact of the matter is Chicago caused a lot of pressure on the Tennessee Titans. They created a lot of miscues for the Tennessee Titans because they were able to blitz, get after Will Levis, who isn't C.J. Stroud. I get it. This Tennessee Titans offensive line is not the Houston Texans offensive line. They don't have a Titus Howard, a Laramie Tunsil, a Shaq Mason. They don't got that over there in Tennessee, and I understand that. But all it takes is, one missed block, and then boom, interception. Boom, turnover. Boom. Now you don't pick up the third down, so you're giving the Chicago Bears a good field position after you punt. They do got to be better in terms of just being able to communicate on some of those extra pressure plays that the Chicago Bears will send at the Texans. And I also think we're overlooking the special teams in this game too. Chicago won their game because of excellent special teams play.
Wasn't it Jonathan Owens?
The Houston Texans defense and special teams carried that team to their first win of the season Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. And the Houston Texans have one of the better special team units, coaches in the NFL over the span of the last 3 to 4 seasons. So we got to look at that element too and say, hey, man, all it takes is a little inch. And maybe a block punt here. Houston Texans suffered a block punt Sunday. Or maybe, we're seeing more returns now. Maybe Steven Sims gives you some juice in the return games. Who knows? But I do think we got to look at the special teams play for both sides and put that on a checklist of, okay, this could be a reason why either team can pull out a victory. Though I don't think it's going to be enough for the Chicago Bears. I really don't. When we come back, we got to hear from you guys. YouTube comments on the way. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. Sit back and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action and on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, MMA champ, Sugar, Son, O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promo tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. Y'all want to go ahead and hop in on that action because I am right now. I got Cody hooked to it. I got my friends hooked to it. My mama calling me, hey, man, so what you got for this week? PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 off instantly when you play $5. That's right, Locked On NFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, first of all, we heading into the weekend, right? It's Virgo season. Y'all have a safe weekend, but make sure, no matter what you do, you get to the game on time, before on time. Get out there and tailgate, have a blast. Look for my man Ruben. But make sure when kickoff starts,
y'all in the stadium.
Butts and seats, because the Houston Texans need to see y'all, man. And this game is going to be a national televised game. Everybody going to be ESPN, Fox Sports, you name it. It's going to be packed. So they need y'all in there. First comment from this man. He's talking crazy, and it started a nice debate. Shout out to my man Jalen Johnson 0339. Because he was repping and rocking the Houston Texans. But Joe Powell 843, and he has an anime emoji, anime profile picture. Caleb about to show y'all what a real generational QB looks like. Williams had 3 TDs in the first half, blown up by the Titans' amazing D-line. Y'all not even close to that level. Caleb gonna eat good. Bear the F down. Cody, would you like to?
How many yards did Caleb Williams have in his debut? 93?
Under 100 for sure.
It was like 92,
Chicago
93.
Bear to win a game with passing under 100 yards since, I think, Rex Grossman.
But I don't understand how a quote-unquote generational quarterback that's what I'm saying. Generational quarterback is going to show up and show out on the road against one of the best defensive teams in the league when – once again, I understand it was your debut, but you only had about 92 to 93 yards. That just doesn't make sense to me. It really don't. Like, I mean, what about all the other rookie quarterbacks who threw for more passing yards in their debut, i.e. Bo Nix, i.e. Jaden Daniels, who looked pretty decent, by the way, I must add, who I consider a better quarterback than a quote-unquote #1. I'm going to just go ahead and throw that out there, but that's another topic, another story for another day. Hey, put it like this. Don't make this be the second year in a row where the #2 pick end up better than the #1 pick. That's all I gotta say right there.
For Carolina Panthers fans, pray for Julian Locked On Panthers. But
that's all I gotta say. Forget
Carolina Panthers fans.
You need to worry about and hope that Caleb is better than Jaden. That's all I gotta say.
Don't worry about CJ Stroud.
Yeah, don't worry about CJ.
My man Elroy Gibson 6443, and Elroy is an older name, so I'm assuming he's an older guy. We talk about the Texans fans making sure that they got butts and seats at the NRG Stadium. Well, he commented and said, my wife said, tell the mayor to fix the freeway and access around the stadium and fans will be there on time. Stop blaming the fans for The ineptitude of government officials. And you know what, Elroy? You got me.
No. So
I
all
ain't got
right.
nothing to say against that.
So what's your
I ain't got
excuse?
nothing to say.
What's your excuse for Toyota Center Rockets? 7 p.m. tip off, and this was even when you had James
Construction
and T
going
Mac.
on all the time in Houston.
You get there early.
Cody,
Get there early.
when did you get to Houston?
2003.
Yeah. 290 was still being worked on, man. It's always something going on, man. I'm not mad at that. Like, okay, I do think so. Getting to the NRG Stadium, there's like 4 back streets, 5 if you're really, really from Houston, right? But I can't be mad at this comment. Hey, man, and they said the city broke, so maybe Cal can look out and help out with some of that. Maybe Miss Janice McNair can help out with some of that. But I can't be mad at that. I'm looking at some of these comments, and we were talking about, should we be concerned because of the play from
Jimmy
Ward, and Derek Dynasty. Yeah, Jimmy ain't it. I never liked him at safety. Let him be the third safety down in the box. Jalen Johnson, 0339. Well, while I'm not high on Jimmy Ward due to the fact that D'Amico chose him over Simmons, he's on the team this year and next year. Okay, I understand that. Teams are going to keep testing Jimmy Ward. This is from Jarrell Scott, 5203. So one of the things that I saw in this is just play Kalen more. And one thing we haven't talked about, can Kalen Bullock, rookie, USC, get a live in-game, not at practice, interception this Sunday against his former quarterback, Caleb Williams. But I do agree with that. I think for Houston, they got to find ways to increase the workload for Kalen, but when it makes sense to put him out there on the field.
So would you think this would be the perfect game to test it out? Because at the end of the day, you're going up against a rookie quarterback. And like I've been saying, this entire offseason, training camp, preseason, now the first week of the regular season, I feel like this is the perfect time for Coach D'Amico Ryans and them to experiment with certain things. These first 6 games, because I guess you could maybe say 7, depending on what's going to happen with Green Bay and Jordan Love and that little situation right there. But once you start having to go up against the Lions and the Cowboys and of course those main 2 teams at the top of the AFC every single year, Baltimore and Kansas City, of course Miami, that's when I will definitely want them to. We should not still be talking about concerns,
Jimmy Ward and
Jimmy Ward and stuff. I really do think this might be an opportunity where Coach D'Amico Ryans sit back and say, you know what, let's increase Kalen's workload for this game, and see what happens. Because if you think about it, John, he got damn good teammates that he's going out there on the field with. And not only is he going up against a rookie quarterback, he's going up against a rookie quarterback, as you just alluded to, his former teammate. So why not? Why not?
I think for Houston, just try some looks out first. Try a look out, right? Go out there in the first half with the game plan that you have, and then depending on how the second half looks, good or bad, try some looks out that won't jeopardize you on the back end too much, but you will be able to give Kalen what he needs to succeed. Because he's still a youngin'. But what's playing in, I think, the Texans' favor, Kalen Bullock's favor, is for back-to-back weeks, they're going to be going up against, I'm still calling Anthony Richardson a rookie type of quarterback, didn't have an opportunity to play a full year. So just see how it works out. I think it's still somewhat too early to tell, but I do think this week is a good indicator on whether or not Houston needs to go out and find another safety, or just say, well, we drafted you to be our single high deep safety. So we're going to give you more opportunities to prove why you should be on the field. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.